Tal Mitnick is an 18-year-old Israeli who refused to be enlisted in the military and was sentenced to 30 days in prison, and he released a statement on exactly why he did not want any part of the IDF. Tal starts his statement off by saying that both Palestinians and the Jewish people have a connection to this land and both deserve to live on that land. He talked about the horrors of October 7th and said that now there's a revenge campaign on not Hamas, but on all Palestinians. Indiscriminate bombings of residential neighborhoods and refugee camps in Gaza, full military and political support for settler violence in the West Bank, and political persecution on an unprecedented scale inside Israel. He says, I refuse to believe that more violence will bring security. I refuse to take part in a war of revenge. He talks about how in his home, life is sacred and discussion is valued, whereas his government only wants your support. Otherwise, they silence your criticism. Because of the criminal lie that there is no innocent civilians in Gaza, hostages waving a white flag, shouting in Hebrew, were shot to death. I don't want to imagine how many similar cases there were that were not investigated because the victims were born on the wrong side of the fence. People who said no negotiations with Hamas were simply wrong, period. Diplomacy, political effort, and policy change are the only way to prevent further destruction and death on both sides. He also says it is important to distinguish between the ordinary people and the generals and the self-serving people who sit at the head of the system. None of the ordinary people decided to fund Hamas, none of us chose to perpetuate the occupation, and none of us decided to move troops to the West Bank days before the invasion because settlers decided to build a sukkah in Hawara. And now, after a long-standing policy that was always destined to explode, we are the ones who are sent to kill and be killed in Gaza. We are not sent to fight for peace, but in the name of revenge. I decided to refuse to enlist before the war, but since it started, I am only more and more sure of my decision. He also goes on to explain what the military stands for, saying that before the war, the army guarded settlements, maintained the murderous siege on the Gaza Strip, and upheld the status quo of apartheid and Jewish supremacy in the land between Jordan and the sea. Since the outbreak of the war, we have not seen any call for a real policy change in the West Bank and Gaza, for an end to the widespread oppression of the Palestinian people and bloodshed, or for a just peace. We are seeing the opposite: the deepening of oppression, the spreading of hatred, and the expansion of the fascist political persecution within Israel. He makes it very clear that the change will not come from corrupt politicians. It will come from us, the people of the two nations. He ends it by saying, I do not want to take part in the continuation of the oppression and the continuation of the cycle of bloodshed, but to work directly for a solution, and therefore I refuse.